Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This journey has led our investigation team into the darkest recesses of human behavior.
Another grim discovery, 93 potential graves at a former residential school in BC's central interior. Also,
it's disheartening. We're under constant attack.
An historic Vancouver neighborhood battered by crime and the plea for help to fix it. An easing of youth sports restrictions and an extension of the BC vaccine card.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After nearly a year of reckoning with the dark past of residential schools and the discovery of unmarked graves in BC and across the country, more remains may now have been found in Williams Lake. As Renee Filipponi shows us, for some, finding the lost is a step towards healing.
It's the discovery here on the former site of St. Joseph's Mission that validated what so many say happened at that BC residential school.
This journey has led our investigation team into the darkest recesses of human behavior.
Following months of investigations using technology like ground-penetrating radar, the Williams Lake First Nation says it found 93 potential human burials.
For the bulk of St. Joseph's Mission history, these reports were at best given no credence. At worst, there was something darker going on in an effort to suppress the emergence of the truth.
Thousands of Indigenous children were forced to attend this residential school between the late 1800s and 1981, with numerous reports of abuse, rape, starvation, and death. The mission has since been demolished. But survivor Bev Sellers visited it with the CBC in the 90s.
This is the junior dorm.
She says for years, elders have been pointing to where the children were buried.
You know, there was a graveyard at St. Joseph's Mission, and they didn't even have the decency to bury the kids in the graveyard with, marking their graves so that parents would be able to come and pay their last respects.
Sellers was forced to attend the school, as well as her mother and grandmother.
It doesn't matter how many they find over there, one is too many. And we need to make sure that Canada knows about these atrocities.
Similar investigations are taking place at residential schools across Canada.
More is coming to light as each of the residential schools are telling their truths and telling their stories.
Only 4 of nearly 400 hectares have been searched at the St. Joseph's Mission. The community is now securing funding to continue the work, saying there can be no reconciliation without truth. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours and is available to anyone who is impacted. Less than a week after Vancouver police released video of a disturbing random attack downtown, a suspect has been charged. Police shared this video of a man assaulting a 22-year-old woman on West Georgia near Howe on New Year's Eve. The force says thanks to tips from the public, officers arrested a suspect early this morning.
50-year-old Stephen Forbes has been charged with 1 count of assault, and he remains in custody until his next court appearance. I think it did help that this happened early in the day, and so that did field a lot of information from the public.
Police say this attack is among a series of unprovoked stranger attacks in the city in the past month. And an increase in vandalism and general street disorder has people growing frustrated in Vancouver's Chinatown. Leaders from the historic neighborhood say it's been battered by crime and they need help. But as John Hernandez is finding out, there's no easy fix.
From spray paint to broken windows, day after day, Vancouver's Chinatown bears the scars of trying times.
It's disheartening, to say the least. It's just we're under constant attack.
The latest, graffiti stretching across the walls of the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Classical Chinese Garden last week, a public monument that's recently been locked up.
This courtyard used to be opened up to the public, and we've had to gate it off, unfortunately, due to the vandalism. it's crazy.
Leaders say the last 2 years have been particularly tough, and it keeps getting worse. Reports of racism have increased while businesses struggle through the pandemic. Still, some owners say the most challenging issue is street disorder associated with local poverty.
There's a lot of people that are heavily inebriated on the street, coming into the store, being very violent towards pedestrians, just really intimidating people on the street, intimidating our staff in the store.
We're working with that community. We have police officers who are assigned to that neighborhood who spend a lot of their time on foot.
But advocates from the neighboring downtown east side say it's not fair to point the finger.
It happens all over the city. It does. I've been vandalized in West Van, Commercial Drive, Kitsilano, bikes stolen, strollers. It's been happening for decades.
And they say it's important to remember many people here are struggling.
This community already has been struggling with grief and loss for many years, and many people dealing with PTSD and trauma, ongoing issues, health issues.
The one thing everyone seems to agree on, people living in poverty need help.
There needs to be ongoing support for the marginalized community, and this affects everybody. It becomes like a bigger issue for everybody. So if we can tackle the main issues of addiction and mental health, I think that would really help.
As for the historic community, the hope is to have it one day deemed a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The province and the city say they're working on it. Those in favor say the designation would come with some much-needed investments to help preserve the character of these streets. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Okay, perhaps a bit of good news. BC health officials think it will be a summer of fewer restrictions than the last 2 years. But for now, some tools to mitigate the risk of the virus are staying in place. Val Puri is here live with us and has been following this story today. Val, first up, the vaccine card program has been extended.
Yes, community transmission is decreasing, but the number of hospitalizations remains high, so vaccine cards are here to stay until at least June 30th. The passport system, of course, requires proof of vaccination for a wide range of activities, from going to movies to dining in restaurants. It was set to expire this month, but don't put away your card quite yet. And there's other news, good news for youth sports. The restriction on tournaments will be lifted effective next Tuesday. Planning of those events can begin. Adult tournaments, however, are still on pause because in many cases, according to health officials, they're social events.
But we know that sports has a different place for youth in terms of growth and development and future opportunities. So we have always prioritized making sure that young people are able to access that part of these important aspects in their lives, particularly at that age, and that there are timing limits for things like university scholarships that become important. So we've taken all that into effect.
The number one way to reduce risk, health officials continue to say, is to be vaccinated. And to that end, dose 2 invitations for children 5 to 11 years old started to go out yesterday.
Okay, and Belle, how are health officials explaining what's allowed to happen and what's not? For example, a lot of complaints about wedding receptions not being able to happen, but hockey games in an arena are okay.
It's all about looking at the risk and what you're doing in any given setting. At family celebrations, health officials say, people may start off with the right intentions, but as the evening progresses, everyone loosens up and protocols can go by the wayside. At places like hockey arenas, bigger spaces, better ventilation, more control.
But when you're at a seat with very small number of people around you and a large amount of space, it's much less risky than when you're in a nightclub or an indoor venue where you're closely with people without a mask on. So it is a gradation of risk.
And all of this is still important because a subvariant of Omicron has been detected in BC in small numbers, albeit, but it's still too early to say how it'll play out. And one other note tonight, this Friday marks the 2-year anniversary of the first case of COVID-19 in the province.
All right, Belle Puri live for us tonight. Thank you, Belle. The number of people in hospital with COVID-19 in BC is near 1,000, but it seems to be leveling off. The ICU numbers, however, are continuing to increase, with 144 of those hospitalized now in intensive care. That's near the highs of the Delta wave. One person has died in the past 24 hours in the Fraser Health region, and no new outbreaks have been declared. So with resolved cases, there are now 63 outbreaks. Two people are in serious condition after their water taxi hit rocks near Tofino. The boat, known as the Rocky Pass, is believed to have been on its way to Howsett, a community on the west coast of Vancouver Island. The Coast Guard says 6 passengers were on board and 4 of them got hurt. The Transportation Safety Board will investigate what happened. In October, the same boat collided with a plane. Witnesses say a float plane clipped the vessel and flipped it upside down. Well, Coquitlam RCMP are stepping up efforts to find a missing teen tonight by releasing new photos connected with the investigation. 14-year-old Noelle O'Soup has been missing for 8 months after leaving her Port Coquitlam home without permission in May. Mounties released 3 images showing this unidentified person at a Surrey SkyTrain station in hopes of sparking new leads. The person is seen wearing a BC Ferries jacket, a Be Clean reflective vest, and dark clothing. O'Soup is First Nations and was last seen wearing a black hoodie with the words "Love" in white letters on the front. Well, embattled Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum did not appear in person for his first court appearance on a charge of public mischief today. Instead, his lawyers took part online. The charge relates to a police complaint he made claiming his foot had been run over in a grocery store parking lot in September. The charge was laid on December 10th, and according to Canada's criminal code, it involves making false statements to a police officer. The court matter lasted just a few minutes and was put over to February 22nd. And the trial of the former clerk of the BC legislature continued in BC Supreme Court today. As Jason Proctor tells us, Crown prosecutors spent the morning and afternoon listing off items that Craig James is accused of buying with taxpayers' money.
BC politics watchers have been hotly anticipating Craig James's breach of trust trial ever since he was first escorted off the legislature grounds in 2018 under a cloud of suspicion. You may remember the headlines, a spending scandal involving, most notoriously, a wood splitter. That piece of machinery featured heavily in the Crown's opening arguments Monday as prosecutor David Butcher explained the 3 breach of trust and 2 fraud charges James faces. James was the clerk of the House of the Legislative Assembly from 2011 until his suspension in 2018. As Butcher explained it, he was like the chief executive officer of the Legislative Assembly, responsible for advising the Speaker on protocol and of overseeing administration and resources of the physical seat of government power in BC. In that role, James is accused of improperly claiming a retirement payout of more than $250,000 under a program that was terminated before he came to his position. And then there's the wood splitter, which was supposed to be for emergencies to clear debris or cut wood for fires needed to keep legislative staff warm. Instead, Butcher said it was kept at James's house, 13 kilometers away from the ledge, where the prosecutor said it would be utterly useless in a time of need. The Crown claims James broke the standard of conduct for legislature employees, putting personal gain ahead of public good. The 5 charges were read to James, who answered not guilty to each of them. And the Crown proceeded to methodically log dozens of exhibits, including pictures of the purchasers at the heart of the case and videos of the wood splitter. The 5 charges were read to James, who answered not guilty to each of them, and the Crown then proceeded to methodically log dozens of exhibits, including pictures of the purchasers at the heart of the case and of the wood splitter. The trial is expected to last 6 weeks. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Authorities in Mexico say they have 2 suspects in custody after Friday's shooting at a resort that left 2 Canadians dead and another hurt.
Y de acuerdo a los datos que arroja la investigación,
the local chief prosecutor alleges the killings were motivated by debts between international criminal gangs. Officials there also suggest the 2 Canadian men who were killed had criminal records. Global Affairs Canada says it's aware of the death of 2 Canadians and the detention of a Canadian citizen in Mexico. The third victim, a Canadian woman who was wounded, is being treated at a local hospital. The prosecutor says the attack had been planned for almost a month before it was carried out at the resort. The hotel, located near Mexico's Caribbean coast, is about an hour drive south of Cancun. After a year of devastating climate events, the BC government is mapping its first strategy to protect and restore the watersheds.
We urgently need to prepare for future climate events and work together to strengthen the security of our precious and threatened water. As climate change and extreme weather events increase in frequency and severity, watersheds play an increasingly central role in our lives.
The province says the importance of preserving watersheds during climate change is simple. Healthy watersheds protect agricultural operations and communities from storms and floods. The process will start with an online forum for the public to give their input. The final strategy is expected to be released in 2023 and beyond extreme water. The past summer's heat dome deeply impacted the lives of British Columbians.
There was about a 13% increase in the average level of climate change anxiety. And so that represents the sort of cognitive and functional impairments. It's hard to concentrate, it's hard to do the things that you kind of normally do in life because you're preoccupied with your concern for the climate. And that's what's on the rise.
According to the new study from SFU, last summer's heat dome contributed to rising anxiety about climate change. It's among the first to show direct links between mental health concerns and climate change-related weather events. The study also found that the number of people who felt their region would be devastated increased from around 18% before the heat dome to close to 30%. The researchers say ongoing monitoring of climate change anxiety is needed to better understand the impact. Well, in Prince George, city officials say they are struggling to keep the sidewalks ice-free. They blame the daily freeze and thaw cycle for slippery streets. City crews are responsible for 200 kilometers of sidewalks, with snow melting during the day and freezing temperatures overnight. Maintaining them has been a challenge, posing a hazardous risk for anyone who walks on them. And it's always a welcome sight for Vancouverites when they see orcas swim up to familiar waters. You just have to be in the right place at the right time. And if you were around Burrard Inlet this morning, it would have been your lucky day. An eyewitness peered down through the fog at the Second Narrows Bridge, where they spotted these orcas having a whale of a time. You can see several whales this pod showing off their fins as they apparently hunt for seals. Last year saw a record number of sightings for certain orca species on the Salish Sea. Whale watchers are hoping the trend keeps up, not just because it's a sign of ecosystems balancing out, but also so they'd be more inclined to visit. And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now. Orcas in the fog. I'm not sure it gets more beautiful than that, Joe.
Oh, that's the name of our next album together, I think. Yeah, it is so Vancouver. And I've got to tell you, Anita, I'm so glad to see those pictures because I was almost in the right time at the right place. I heard the reports near Second Narrows, and I was down on Wall Street. So I went to one of those park inlets and I couldn't quite see them, but I felt the magic. So nice to see the pictures. We've got more fog in the forecast, that I can guarantee. Let's start off with the current temperatures, though. It is chilly out there tonight. Take a look at where we're sitting at, just above the freezing mark across the south coast. 3 for YVR right now. Up in North Van, we're close to the freezing mark. Abbotsford at a 1. This has basically been our story. We get down close to the freezing mark in the evenings and through the morning hours. So here's the forecast for the overnight. Getting down to about -1 for most of Metro Vancouver to kick off your Wednesday as that fog rolls in once again. Here's a look at the picture on the way to Terrace this morning. And this really has been the story. Fog entrenched in the valleys, but if you can get above it, it is gorgeous blue skies in that inversion. And we did see the sun stream through into Metro Vancouver earlier this afternoon, just in time for that golden light. Just one sunbeam sometimes is all it takes for some mixing. So we still have that dense fog advisory in place, Anita, for one more day. I'll take you through the chances of a sunbeam coming up in the forecast.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. I feel like your toque is really representative of what we're about to get, so.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but you're noting something, yes.
All right, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Sophia Financial Group of Raymond James Limited. Register now for our free Cash Flow Connection series at sophiaevents.ca.
An already embattled UK PM is facing new questions tonight over parties held during lockdown. Now the police are having a look. The latest from London is next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, it's only a small fish, but silvery smelt makes big waves in the Maritime. Smelting season is a tradition for both anglers and eaters alike. Lynn Gregan and his fellow fishers show us the haul. Take a look.
A smelt is a delicate, tasty little critter. Fish that we have here in many of the maritime provinces. But here in Miramichi Bay, it's a delicacy. It's one of our mainstays in our community. Back in the older days, all our forefathers had to go out in the ice and fish them. They didn't have the power saws or the fancy equipment that we have today. Like today we have snowmobiles and power saws to help us set nets, where before they had to do it all by hand. Used to come up by horses. It's really a dying breed. There's not too many young fellas now want to take it up because you're out in the elements so much, and really there's not as good a dollar value as in the other species. Normally we'll get the skidoos warmed up around 8 o'clock in the morning. Power saw is greased up and oiled up and make sure everything's working before we go. Because if you're 10 or 15 miles away from home, it's a long walk back. And we'll saw out the holes, get the net all ready, and we'll close up the net. And the nets are 50 feet long, 14 feet wide, and they go anywhere from 4 feet deep to 12 feet deep. And when we saw the what we call the smelt hole, it's 2 feet wide, 14 feet long. So when we go to fish it, we close the net and we haul it 25 feet of web out, and in the end, that's where we get our bounty from the sea. Hopefully it's a good catch. Some days it's better than others. And but we got to take the good with the bad. Nothing ain't good in that end, eh? Right now we have 20 nets on the water, and we have to fish those every 3 days. We try to average 1,000 pounds a day. That's a ballpark number. That's what we got to make to cover our expenses. And then we do that. It takes till 4 or 5 o'clock every day. And if it's good going, and then we got to get ready for the next day. You know, we got to take the fish to the fish plant. We got to repair any power saws that are broken, and get in the house where it's nice and warm. Put the furnace fires on and have a good hearty supper.
Hospitalizations are still rising across Canada, all driven by Omicron. Vaccines are still effective against the variant, but they could work better. As Christine Birak shows us, an updated shot tailored to Omicron is now in human trials.
Pfizer is now testing its new Omicron-based shot.
We are looking to see if we can create a vaccine that covers Omicron and doesn't forget the other variants.
In a news release, the drug maker announced its trial includes 1,400 healthy adults in 3 groups. People who've received 2 doses of the current vaccine will receive 1 or 2 doses of the Omicron-based shot. Those who've had 3 shots will receive a dose of the current vaccine or the new one. And a third group that's vaccine naive or unvaccinated will receive 3 doses of the Omicron-based shot. Recent studies do show third doses or booster shots of current mRNA vaccines are 90% effective at preventing Omicron hospitalizations. But experts say an Omicron-based shot could protect people from even getting infected.
Unless if something completely different comes out.
In other words, there's no way of knowing whether the next variant of concern will resemble Omicron or not. But researchers are already investigating a variant that's being called Omicron's twin.
So we don't really know if BA2 is going to become a thing that we need to worry about.
Scientists say BA2 might be more contagious. It now accounts for roughly half of all current infections in Denmark.
What is important to remember here is that Denmark is not Canada. Denmark is a different population with different vaccine uptake, different medical histories and demographics.
Can you get infection with the original strain of Omicron, and then 2 months later, this B2 variant comes around and now you get reinfected again? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest questions.
So far, there have been a small number of BA2 reinfections. The hope is those who've already encountered Omicron are protected. Pfizer says results from its Omicron-based vaccine trial will take months, but the shot could come in handy. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Police in London are investigating possible COVID-19 lockdown breaches at the UK Prime Minister's office and residence. It's alleged Boris Johnson and his staff attended multiple parties there when bans for all social gatherings were in effect. And as Margaret Evans tells us, it adds a further political blow to Johnson, who is already facing growing calls to resign.
High noon seems to have come and gone again for Boris Johnson more than once in recent days. This one, no exception. That's the Prime Minister's motorcade leaving Westminster.
I now call the Prime Minister.
After telling Parliament he's happy police have decided to investigate what's been called Partygate here.
Because I believe this will help to give the public the clarity it needs and help to draw a line under matters.
Some say the police investigation might buy Johnson some time. The country's already clamoring for the results of a civil servants report commissioned by Johnson himself.
It's a stay of execution potentially for the Prime Minister, but politically it makes the situation, I think, even more toxic for his party.
Scotland Yard has turned its earlier position on its head, initially declining to investigate the Downing Street parties. Here, the police commissioner is explaining the change of heart.
There was evidence that those involved knew or ought to have known that what they were doing was an offence.
The most recent news of a surprise birthday party for Boris Johnson at Downing Street, thrown by his wife during lockdown, won't have helped. On the streets, people are weary, and in Parliament, tempers are still flaring.
Can we please have a sense of proportion over the Prime Minister being given a piece of cake in his own office by his own staff?
So it seems, Mr. Speaker, potential criminality has been found in Downing Street. What a truly damning reflection on our nation's very highest office.
Johnson does have his supporters, and the cabinet is holding so far.
And he's got all the big decisions right.
Not everyone will agree with that. More than 175,000 Britons lost their lives in the pandemic. Analysts say that's why there's so little appetite for forgiveness in the public.
Things can change very, very quickly. So whilst I would say the balance of probability now is that ultimately he will fall, it's not absolutely certain.
And so Britain now awaits not one, but 2 reports, still locked in the grip of a scandal that won't go away. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
As a convoy of trucks makes its way from Vancouver to Ottawa, protesting vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers, questions are being raised about where millions of dollars raised by the convoy is coming from. Travis Dunraj is looking at the growing concerns that this protest could turn violent.
Crowds gather to support truckers passing through Manitoba en route to the nation's capital. Social media buzzing with support as well.
This is not a vaccination, unvaccination. This is people who are against mandates. These mandates are ruining the economy. They're ruining Canada. They're strangling us.
But some of the rhetoric leading up to Saturday's protest on Parliament Hill is not as tame.
But I would like to see our own January 6th event. See some of those truckers plow right through that 16-foot wall.
There have also been threats of violence towards politicians, including on the Prime Minister's life.
We have, of course, seen extremist groups, the white supremacists, the accelerationists, the Canada First crowd, all these people trying to get involved. Not saying everyone involved in this movement is an extremist, but are definitely trying to aim their narratives at this larger movement to try and see if they can get any traction.
On just one GoFundMe page, organizer Tamara Litch has raised over $4 million. She's also asking for direct e-transfers. Litch has no known ties to the trucking industry and is part of Alberta's separatist Maverick Party.
And make sure that your hard-earned dollars, in most cases that you can't afford to give, are going to the right place.
The crowdfunding site GoFundMe has frozen the funds until it gets documentation on how they will be distributed. There are also concerns about who is behind tens of thousands in anonymous donations.
And there's no restrictions on geographic location for these kinds of crowdfunding campaigns. So some of this could be foreign money, it could be Canadian money. At this point, we really just don't know.
The Canadian Truckers Alliance has said it strongly disapproves of the protest and is complying with the vaccination mandate. About 90% of truckers across the country are said to be vaccinated. The federal government put out a joint statement with the group today saying it is working on tackling supply chain issues, but did not address security threats or more extremist voices wrapped into the movement. Travis Danner, CBC News, Ottawa.
Neil Young wants his music to be taken off of Spotify. The Canadian legend says it's because there are others on the platform that he won't support. Eli Glasner has the reaction.
Ain't singing for Pepsi. Ain't singing for Coke.
In his songs and in life, Neil Young is known for speaking his mind.
I don't sing for nobody.
Now the musician is taking on the streaming site Spotify. In a now-deleted letter, Young says he is canceling all his music availability on Spotify as soon as possible because the platform is spreading false information about vaccines. They can have Rogan or Young, not both, he says.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
He's talking about comedian turned wildly popular podcast host Joe Rogan, a podcast known for inviting COVID-19 contrarians with confusing and dangerous views.
He won't challenge them, won't challenge their claims, and often their evidence is very flimsy.
As listeners increasingly turned to podcasting during the pandemic, Rogan cashed in with an exclusive contract with Spotify. The Joe Rogan Experience now reaches an estimated 11 million people an episode.
So now we're seeing the type of numbers on podcasts that rival, mainstream TV shows. And with that comes responsibility.
But while addressing misinformation has become commonplace on other platforms,
YouTube has to do it, Twitter has to do it, Facebook has to do it. Okay, so they're all doing it. They're producing content and they're moderating it. Spotify isn't doing it.
While many of Rogan's controversial COVID chats are still online, Spotify is staying silent. As for Neil Young, this music critic says if there's a through line to his career, it's his willingness to speak out.
You can read a history book and then you can go through his catalog, and he has had something to say at every important moment in history, and he has said it loudly.
As the industry waits, she'll be watching to see if other artists join Young, forcing the streamer to choose between the musicians and the podcasting megastar. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
During the pandemic, Atlantic provinces have seen an influx of Canadians from other parts of the country. It's put a strain on housing and left some tenants feeling squeezed. In New Brunswick, they're facing some of the steepest rent increases in the country. And as Kayla Hounsell explains, some are calling on the province to do more.
Irene Murphy got word her rent was going up in December by nearly $400.
The biggest percentage of the tenants there are seniors. So a lot of us are on fixed incomes, and there's just no way that you can afford that kind of rent.
Murphy and her neighbors are not alone. Statistics Canada reports rents in all 4 Atlantic provinces have been increasing during the pandemic as Canadians flock east. but nowhere faster than in New Brunswick.
Tenants in New Brunswick have far fewer rights and protections than tenants almost anywhere else in the country.
This lawyer helped form the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights 2 years ago after struggling to find housing himself. He says the crunch is partially due to a squeezed housing market and partially because of corporate landlords with no interest in affordable housing.
We're living in a Wild West situation where the government is unwilling or unable to recognize that there's a power imbalance between landlords and tenants.
Unlike in some other provinces, there are no rent caps in New Brunswick.
The data does show that provinces with rent control do not have a more favorable housing market in terms of affordability.
The minister responsible did not make herself available for an interview. In a statement, she notes in December the provincial government brought in measures to limit rent increases to once a year and require 6 months' notice.
There's still no limit on the amount you can increase rent by. You're still going to lose your home at the end of it.
For Murphy, paying the increase would mean giving up her vehicle, a loss of independence.
All they're looking at doing is padding their own bank accounts, and it doesn't really matter whether it's seniors or who it is that they're gouging.
She's already decided to move, but still wants the government to cap rent hikes so her new landlord can't also force her out of her home. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Another distressing find in this province at a former residential school. 93 potential burial sites. We hear from the chief of the Williams Lake First Nation coming up.
Canada's journey to the top of the hockey world started with some incredible moments of raw patriotism. In the shadow of Canada Hockey Place, a road hockey game where the police took on the spectators.
And where else in the world can you be a policeman and play road hockey and not get fired?
The costumes were over the top. These guys dressed up as butchers with rubber chickens as the U.S. players.
Barrick, you're going down! A-O, Canada, go! A-O, Canada, go! USA, baby! Yeah!
And for the poor U.S. fans, they took a mostly good-natured razzing. Those lucky enough to go inside had tickets to perhaps the single biggest hockey game ever played on Canadian soil.
Probably the most sought-after ticket, not only North America, but in the world.
People could have watched from home, but this is something many wanted to share. So as early as 7:30 in the morning, thousands lined up outside Vancouver bars and any other place with a TV set, including the Canadian Embassy in the U.S. capital.
It's just like siblings. Every sibling loves a good sibling rivalry. It's definitely going to be a fight to the end. I cannot wait to the last 5 minutes of the game.
That was prescient. Canada scored early and carried a 1-goal lead to the end of the third period. But then, with just 24 seconds left and the U.S. goalie out for an extra attacker, the Americans evened the game. It was into overtime, and for shell-shocked fans, the hyperventilating began.
It's crazy. I'm shaking. I'm freaking out.
Then, 7 minutes and 40 seconds into sudden death, Sidney Crosby sent the nation into hockey ecstasy.
And that shot was a beauty, like an absolute beauty. I brought tears to my eyes. It was so awesome.
Crosby finally came through. He's been playing great the entire tournament, but he just wasn't getting to the net, and he finally did it. Gold! Yes!
As the gold medals were presented, the anthem played, and outside it was as if the entire nation was singing along.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. BC's vaccine card program has been extended until June 30th. It was scheduled to end at the end of this month, and now youth sports tournaments will be allowed to return February 1st. Adult sports tournaments are still on hold.
People that are heavily inebriated on the street, coming into the store, being very violent towards pedestrians, just really intimidating people on the street, intimidating our staff in the store.
Frustrations are mounting from some members of Vancouvers Chinatown community amid vandalism and what they call general street disorder. Leaders from the historic neighborhood say it's been battered by crime and they need help. From spray paint to broken windows, the province says it is working on it. 93 potential human burial sites have been identified by Williams Lake First Nation in an investigation on the land of a former residential school. The sites display characteristics indicative of potential human burials, but that will have to be confirmed through excavation. The findings are being described as part of a reawakening for Indigenous people about the lingering traumas of the residential school system. And we wanted to expand on our coverage of this important story and bring you more of what Chief Willie Sellers and residential school survivor Bev Sellers had to say. Take a listen.
We cannot afford to have another generation grow up without understanding the truth of the residential school system and the impact it has had on First Nations people. We need to heal. At St. Joseph's Mission, survivor stories tell us that many children will remain unaccounted for, even after our geophysical and archival work is complete. And that is very scary and disturbing. Their bodies were cast into the river, left at the bottom of lakes, tossed like garbage into incinerators. For those children, there will be no headstone, no unmarked grave, no small fragment of bone to be forensically analyzed. For those families, there will be no closure. It is for those children and families that we grieve the most. It is important that these investigations remain in the public eye, that we as a nation continue in an unwavering path forward in our pursuit of the truth with respect to St. Joseph's Mission and other residential schools in Canada.
St. Joseph's Mission, I think my grandmother, who was born in 1896, was the first one to attend. She spent 9 years there. My mom, and she spent 10 years there. My mom was born in 1925, and I was born in 1955, and I spent 5 years there. Every year, my grandmother would, every time we had to go back to the mission, she always told us, I don't want to send you kids there, but if I don't send you there, they're going to put me in jail. And so she knew what was going to happen to us, because she was there and my mom was there, and she knew the trauma that we would be facing. You know, people, they always say this chapter in Canadian history is, has not been revealed. And to me, it's not a chapter. Canadian history has to include Indigenous people in everything, everything. We're not a chapter. We were here before everybody else got here, and this is not a chapter in Canadian history.
If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours and is available to anyone who is impacted. At 6:43, a live look tonight at BC Place. It's lit up orange in honor of the children and survivors of St. Joseph's Mission Residential School in Williams Lake. Still plenty of fog in the morning, so will it roll back tonight? Johanna has your full weather coming up. And Team Canada has been named, and with the NHL sitting out this Olympics, the choices are a bit more unknown. We break down the team and the chances of Olympic glory next.
Hello, Mr. Orlando here. Sellers, your resident hockey enthusiast, here today at the beautiful Ted Reeve Arena. Woo.
And I'm Gary the Unicorn, the official referee of this, what do you call this again?
A rink?
Yeah, a rink.
Very good, Gary. Like I was saying, we are here today to ask, what in the Olympic Winter Games is this?
Mr. Orlando, how did you know that I like black licorice?
No, Gary. This is actually made of very hard rubber. Yeah!
Okay, fine. When do we score some goals?
Well, actually, Gary, this is called a hockey puck. We use it in order to score goals. Hockey players shoot the puck into the net to score points for their team. Every single game starts off with a puck drop from the referee.
Wow! Who knew that the puck was so important? Aw, come here, Pucky.
All right, Gary, I am ready for the puck drop.
What? No.
What?
No way, I could never drop my best friend.
But Gary, you heard what I said. The referee drops the puck to start the game.
But Pucky and I are hugging. What was that?
That means our ice time has ended, Gary.
Oh. But our friendship time is just beginning, right, Pucky?
Sigh.
Yeah. You feel my heart, Pucky? It's beating for you.
Gary, watch out for that Zamboni!
Oh!
The hardest thing for us has been finding a pathway through because there's absolutely penguins everywhere you look.
We purposely chose this campsite because it was a place where the penguins didn't seem to go. I think we've realised why the penguins don't nest here. It's because of the spray and because of the runoff. So we are literally in a bit of a bog.
A couple of these guys, as they wander down to do a spot of fishing, they tend to use my tent as a little poop spot. You kind of get used to it at night, just hearing a constant splat on top of the tent. As soon as you walk over that ridge, you sort of get tingly feeling because I've never seen that many animals in one spot. It's just mind-blowing. This is penguin paradise, and that's what we're trying to show.
Wildfires that have been scorching California's Big Sur coast since the weekend are now 45% contained. The fires erupted last Friday night, fueled by dry offshore winds, but increased humidity has helped firefighters make progress against the blaze. Now, wildfires aren't uncommon in California, but burns of this size and at this time of year have locals and authorities concerned. The fire has triggered evacuation orders for about 500 people in the lightly populated area about 100 miles south of San Francisco. Let's bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now to talk about this. Joe, we heard there, not uncommon for California, but right now, January, how odd is that?
Unfortunately, this is a trend that we're seeing grow in the U.S., particularly Southwest. Wildfire season no longer confined to the spring, summer, and fall months. It's extending right through to the winter. And while this fire is 45% contained, we do have more humid conditions in the forecast. We're always watching the trends down in California. We're also seeing our wildfire season grow with climate change in British Columbia. Taking you to the current temperatures, where we are on the warm side of the jet stream. You wouldn't know it with our temperatures. The Arctic air mass, though, still very much in place for central Canada. -30 temperatures right now for Lake Superior. And Atlantic Canada gearing up for another major snowstorm hitting the Maritimes and Newfoundland overnight tonight with another 20 plus centimeters. We've got our high pressure that's bringing us fog, inversions, chilly morning temperatures, and breaks of sun, and some elevated air quality. We're watching for that in Prince George. You've got the air quality special weather statement in place. Taking you through the forecast, here's tomorrow, a snapshot at tomorrow afternoon. Some high clouds filling in over our ridge for most of the province. But as we head into the afternoon and into Thursday, high pressure rebounds. So there is a chance tomorrow afternoon and then a better chance Thursday afternoon that we'll see the sun poke through in the afternoon, similar to what we saw again today. It might take till 3 or 4 p.m. and then we've lost our chances of a warm day, but we'll be playing that fog sunbeam game for a couple more days. Look what is lurking off the coast, though. That next low pressure system will be hitting central and northern BC for Thursday night, sliding down into the south coast. I think not until Saturday. Some models pushing it closer to Friday. I think we'll be dry until Saturday, ramping up Saturday overnight into Sunday. So that will be the end of our high pressure ridge. Check out these conditions, though, across the province. Lots of sunshine unless you get socked in the valley. Temperatures are fairly chilly, though. And Prince Rupert, nice to see you on this side of the jet stream. Showers dissipating tonight, and then you too will get into the sunshine. Temperatures, again, really variable over the next couple of days. Let's see if I can get that fog icon in for you. There we go. Looking for that for 2 more days. Increasing clouds Friday, showers Saturday. We might get a bookended sunshine, a weekend with sunshine. Next week looks a little cool and soggy. But Anita, you were right. More sunshine in today's forecast.
I like it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, the start of the 2022 Winter Olympics is less than 2 weeks away, and today the Canadian men's hockey team roster has been unveiled. The team is determined to bring home the gold, but as Jamie Strachan shows us, it won't be relying on big names from the NHL for that.
This was not the team Canada expected.
Devin Levi from the Lac des Armeaux, Quebec.
Just this whole thing, this whole experience is crazy. If you asked me last year, the year before, if I ever thought I was going to the Olympics, I'd say probably not.
With NHL players sidelined, the 25-man roster headed to Beijing is an eclectic mix. Youngsters like Devin Levi.
In shoots, and Levi makes the point-blank save.
Owen Power.
Across the power, high shot scores! Owen Power, power play goal!
And 18-year-old Mason McTavish.
There, walks in and shoots, scores! Mason McTavish!
Also, 37-year-old Eric Stahl.
And Eric Stahl makes it 2-0.
One of 9 former NHLers. This hastily assembled team, cobbled together with players from around the hockey world, will gather this week in Switzerland, many meeting each other for the first time.
We've kind of just arrived. Like, guys are kind of coming in, just trickling in now. We had a good skate today, but a lot of guys, flew overnight.
The on-ice chemistry will be a challenge, but so too will be making it to Beijing healthy, as so many athletes are learning ahead of these games.
Obviously, there's a reason why we're here in Switzerland. We're trying to make it as simple and as isolated as possible. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that that's our first and foremost concern for our players.
While this team may not be the star-studded roster many fans had hoped for, former Olympian Cheryl Pounder predicts Canadians will embrace them.
When you put on a jersey for your country, it is that feeling, whether you are a star or whether, you're a journeyman who is on their last legs, you put it on. And so I think that's what I think everyone gravitates towards.
They have just days to practice together. Canada's first game against Germany is just over 2 weeks away. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, our snow might have come and gone here on the South Coast, but you don't have to go too far into the mountains to find some fresh powder. May not be good for sledding, though. We'll tell you why next.
So we came up with the Ultimate Snowman Challenge, offering kids from all grade levels, English and French additional language, to participate. And the only real requirement was that they take a picture of their finished snowman and one with their family. with the snowman. Some people are dressing up their snowmen in clothing. Some are using things that they're finding in the environment to put on their snowmen. Others are painting their snowman. And it's just so much fun because everybody has their own take. So the teachers who are working with the students will use that as an opportunity to build vocabulary, to do procedural writing activities. But really, we wanted the students to have some fun, to learn together, and to be able to share those images. And they're wonderful. The ones that we're seeing so far are just wonderful. The favorite part for me is to see those pictures with families, with the finished product, and everybody with a smile on their faces. And we'll come up with a new challenge every Friday. We'll present it to our students and see what they do with the next one, as a way to keep them motivated and engaged in not just the learning process, but having fun, doing some of those wellness activities with their own families that promote learning at all times.
Hello, I'm Liam from CBC Edmonton, and I am here to try out ski skating.
Snowfit is a short mini skis, and it's super easy to wear with any winter boots. So you just take it off this clip and put it on. It's starting since last year. In Canada, we are the first ones renting this equipment. These are from Europe and are super awesome and easy to put it in your bag, and just you need your poles, Snowfit, winter boots, that's it. More easy impossible. Sometimes we are using here in this park and people stop us and they try immediately.
We actually have taken them to Rabbit Hill, and we actually hit the terrain park. We hit the jumps, we hit a couple boxes. There's a few people right now that are pretty crazy on these and do like backflips, all that stuff. Now everyone, it's like skis and snowboards. I feel like it's going to be skis, snowboards, and snow feet.
Tobogganing is a time-honored winter activity for many Canadian kids, and there's been no shortage of fresh snow on the ground in many parts of the country lately, including here in BC. And you might think that would make it a great day to go sledding, but as Ethan Williams shows us, the type of snow that falls can make quite a difference.
Who knew that snow could be so controversial? While people are heading to the toboggan hill for some sledding, there seems to be a bit of a debate over which type of snow is best for this winter activity. Dry, light, and fluffy, or wet, heavy, and slushy?
So that heavy, wet snow is more compactable, so when you sit on your sled, you compact it, you stay on top, and you're able to stay on top throughout the entire sled run.
So when you're trying to be on a toboggan with that, or when you're trying to ski through it, or when you're trying to get your snowmobile through it, it's really sticky and it's really hard to get through that stuff. So it's actually not slippery at all.
How wet the snow is depends on something called the snow ratio. The lower the ratio, the wetter the snow. For instance, if the ratio is 5:1, that means it takes just 5 centimeters of snow to make a centimeter of water. But if the ratio is 20:1, it would take 20 centimeters of snow for just a centimeter of water.
So we've heard what the experts have to say about the best type of snow, and it's time now to turn this question over to one tobogganing enthusiast.
The slushy and the sticky snow, you're generally gonna
move a little slower, right? And then your more dry, hard packed or groomed stuff, you're gonna move a little faster, right? So to say what the best one is might be a little tough, because you might have the parent with their kid on their lap where they're looking to use that wet, slushy, sticky snow and go a little slower. And then you've got maybe the kid that likes to go really fast, and he's looking for more of that dry, hard packed and even icy condition.
So at the end of the day, it might come down to personal preference, but our experts do agree on a few things. Stay dry to keep warm, dress in layers, and of course, have fun.
All snow is good snow when it comes to winter activities, really.
Who knew? I haven't been able to get on a sled this winter, but maybe there's still hope. Let's see. One thing's for sure, I will be dressing in layers like he recommended. Thanks for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. That's it for our show. We'll see you back here tomorrow.